Hey everyone, this is Matt from LSAT Cracked, and I want to share 5 lessons I learned on my path to getting a 179 LSAT and getting into Harvard Law School. The first lesson is that the test is harder than you think. When I first studied for it back in December of 2007, I was playing poker professionally. I thought this test would be moderately difficult. I was taking individual practice test sections, sort of stitching them together, missing 2 per section, something like that. Thought I would get a 170. Pretty easy, right? I actually take the December 2007 test and I get a 161. Now that's still a pretty good score, but I knew it was less than what I was capable of, and it was sort of a punch to the stomach, right? I was really deflated. I was sort of in denial. I didn't want to retake the test. I then convinced myself I didn't want to go to law school, and I was grappling with that, right? So the first thing is to simply realize there's a big difference between, knowing the concepts kind of sort of and having done 25 to 30 practice tests and just knowing the material completely cold. So first thing is this test is a relatively difficult test. It's going to require you to study hard for it. The second thing is that I've already hinted at, you should be willing to retake the test. If for whatever reason your first test score is below what you either know you're capable of or what you've done on practice tests, or is simply below the threshold that you need to get to go to a good enough law school to make this a high ROI life choice, you need to put your pride to the side, which is something I struggled to do at first, and be willing to retake the test. The third thing I learned is how crucial practice tests were. Those 25 to 30 practice tests that I alluded to? That's what I did the second time that I studied. I also took Test Masters, which is a great course, structured, have nothing but good things to say about them. But in addition to the 4 to 6 practice tests that they recommended, I did 20 to 25 of my own, and that made a massive difference on both my skill acquisition, my stamina and endurance, and just my overall confidence on test day. I went into that June 2008 test feeling like this is the 30th practice test I'm taking. I've just knocked out several mid 170 scores in a row. I'm here to crush this thing. And I did, and I got a career best 179 on it. But the point is, I was in a completely different mindset than I was 6 months prior. The other lesson I learned, I studied that second time while having a full-time job. I made time for studying. I put my social life down to 0. I did reading comp during my lunch break. I did practice tests or classes at night. I took practice tests weekend mornings. I made the time for it. Now, I don't think I would have been able to pull this off if my full-time job had been more than sort of a standard chill 9 to 5 type job. If you're working in banking or consulting or something like that, I'm not sure that you have the time to really study for the LSAT the way that you need to. But in general, most people that think they don't have the time, on some level, they just don't want it badly enough. And they can find the time in their schedule if they make it a priority. The last thing I would say is, when I first started studying for the test, I sort of lazily defaulted to wanting a 170 because it's a round number and it's kind of high. And it's just the default score that almost every reasonably smart student who wants to go to law school, they say, I want to get a 170. Dive into what number you really need. What number are you really capable of? When does the results or the benefits of getting a higher score start diminishing? I would argue that for a lot of people, it's closer to 173 to 175. Could be the difference between getting into a top 10 school versus getting into a top 5 or a top 3. And it could also be the difference between getting into a school and paying full sticker price versus getting in and getting a full ride scholarship. So I would just say for your motivation and the overall lessons that I learned that a 170 is a fantastic score, but there are scores that are above it that could make a difference to your life, and you shouldn't just default to assuming that a 170 is where you want to be. Hopefully these lessons that I've learned are helpful for you, and I'm wishing you the best on your LSAT journey. Good luck.